Welcome back to another groundbreaking episode of EdUp Career Schools, The Scoop with your host, K.A.T. Today is going to be a lot of fun because I have my girl here, Mrs. Danielle Shelton, okay? And we are talking about toxicity in the workplace. This is such an important topic because mental health is critical when it comes to the workplace. And I've realized that there's so many people who are not even sure if they're in a toxic work environment. They just know they feel off. And then there's a lot of people who are contributing to the toxic work environment and they have no idea because this is just who they are. Yes. So we're going to talk through what is a toxic work environment and some ways that we can work through this or overcome. So first off, Ms. Danielle, introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Well, my name is Danielle Shelton. I was a 20-year education vet, but I am now an instructional design consultant. See, that title hit good. Instructional design consultant.
Love it.
Which is really just a fancy way of saying that I work on the other side of building online classrooms. So that's pretty much what I do. So I'm kind of sort of still in education. I'm just not necessarily with the students. I'm more so with the professors, which is a whole other treat all by itself. So I'm also a writing coach. And I am a podcast host with Tips and Tricks podcast. And that's pretty much it, man. Just out here, author. So check me out on Amazon. That's about it.
Wait a minute. Your daughter is an author too.
Yes, she is. My daughter is an author, Zoe Shelton. So check her out, zoeshelton.com. Check out her book. She is an author as well. And she was just featured on Channel 6 News with Juwan Strader for an episode called Voices. So please, please, please support her, the young author in the house.
I love it. And how old is she?
She is 10 now, but when she wrote her book, she was 6. So
that is amazing. Shout out to Zozo. All right, so let's get into it. So Danielle, first off, let's talk about what is a toxic work environment. Okay, what would you say?
Well, first, let me say this. When I was teaching in middle school, secondary education, we had an assistant principal. He was new to staff, but he made it very clear that he wanted to be in charge, right? And he wanted to be like the hammer. And he had gotten used to intimidating staff. So when he came on staff, and I will never forget this, I was in the copy room with my other coworkers and I had on a yellow dress. And he was bold enough to say to me, "Oh man, you look so nice. You look like a sexy banana."
Stop. Are you kidding?
Excuse me, sir? Look, my coworkers that I still talk to today, because we are very good friends, they don't forget, because they were like, "Did he just call you a sexy banana?" First of all, I never wore that yellow dress again. But second of all, I was like, oh my God, like it was so inappropriate. But he was so, like, he didn't even gather that what he said was inappropriate. Mm-hmm. So I tell that story to say a toxic work environment to me consists of people in power who have no idea sometimes that what they're doing and saying is inappropriate, mm-hmm. and is making the people who are helping them build their companies feel unsafe. That's what a toxic work environment is to me. If I don't feel safe working with you, mm-hmm. this environment now is toxic. And I can say with him being a assistant principal, it made me be like, this is not a safe mm-hmm. work environment. And I have experienced that in higher ed, not to that degree in terms of inappropriateness, but definitely feeling unsafe.
And that's very important, especially when it comes to the term unsafe. And this is the problem. So I have two additional definitions too. It says one where negative, antagonistic, or bullying behavior is baked into the culture.
Yes,
That is a huge problem.
absolutely.
Okay. And then we have American Psychological Association. They say infighting, intimidation, or other affronts that harm productivity. I don't think that leadership understands how much a toxic work environment plays in lack of productivity when it comes to their employees. All right, so let's get into a couple of examples. I know we have 1,000, but we're going to try to at least keep this list to 999.
Look, because I've been an adjunct for a while, and then I was hired as full time, and then I went. So my span of higher ed is about 11, 12 years. And can I just tell you, one of the worst experiences, we were living in Texas at the time, Houston, Texas, and my brother had passed. And when my brother passed, I needed to come back to Florida to be with my family, to be with my mom. And there was a school that I taught where I was an adjunct. And at that school, I had 3 classes. And I let this person know, hey, it's just me and my brother, or my brother and I. And I need to make sure that my mom's okay. My students understood. And when I say I had a plan, I told them what the assignments were. I checked in. I set up like a sort of like remind, making sure that my students were not lost as I was away. Within 3 days, that person emailed me and said, you need to come back to Houston. This is a mess. I understand death, but you are taking advantage. And I'm like, excuse me?
Wow.
We haven't even had the funeral yet. And she was like, this will be the last time you will be an adjunct for this school. And I was just like, that's probably the best idea. That's you, right? That's probably the better idea, because if you lack the simple empathy to be able to say, let me at least give her a week, 3 days was like crazy to me. So it's those kind of environments that let me know exactly what type of leader she was.
You said something very important, which is empathy. I've had more than enough coworkers that I want to mention who have been in the hospital. And the entire time that they're in the hospital, I had one person who had a leader go visit them at the hospital, not to bring flowers, but to bring work.
Wow.
There was people who's calling hospital rooms, asking them about stats for the team before they took sick. I mean, really and truly, like you're in the hospital of like oxygen. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, did you remember to send a report before you got sick? Like, who does that? Right?
That's
but
crazy.
Then you have people who, when you go into different work environments, you can kind of feel, you know, the sense of what's going on there, even as close as the interview. I went on an interview one time. And it was for a VP position. So I'm sitting at the head of the table, and there's all of the other executive team at the table. And they're arguing. I'm sitting there like waiting for the next question.
During the interview?
Yes, during the interview. I'm sitting at the head of the table, and there's 6 of them, 3 on each side. And they start arguing. And the crazy thing is, the reason why they were arguing is because one was asking me a question, another one cut them off, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so rude. I'm still talking. They're like, well, I want to answer a question too. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no way that I'm stepping back in this building, even if I'm offered the position. That right there already gave me a sign of what that environment would be like if management can't even get along. How about the blame game? No one is taking accountability. It's just finger pointing, and it's everybody's fault.
And I'm going to tell you what I learned in higher education. The blame game is played differently. People don't directly say you. They talk to other people, and then it circulates back to you. And you're like, So was that for me? Was that? And it gets very general. And I think that's probably one of the things that always bothered me about education is people are very indirect and very passive aggressive.
I was just about to say that.
And it's annoying because if it's me, then just say me and come to me. But people rarely do that. And I'm going to tell you something. There is a culture at one of my schools where the person in charge, they didn't want to talk to the staff that had the issue. So instead of talking to the staff, they demoted them and promoted someone that they were training.
Wow.
To be over them now.
Wow.
Why wouldn't you just talk to that person and give them an opportunity to see what happened? That's not what happened at all. When I say I was floored, I was like, now what? What? So the finger pointing, the blame game now isn't even a game anymore. Now it's like, I'm not even going to give you an opportunity to see if this is true and if this is something that you did. I'm going to make it easier for somebody to say it was Kathy. And then I'm never going to actually talk to Kathy. I'm just going to talk to everybody around Kathy. And it's Kathy's fault. And meanwhile, Kathy is sitting there like, what?
What is happening? You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of church sometimes, right? People always talk about, like, if you're in a close-knit church and then something happens to someone in the congregation and everyone actually knew about it. That Sunday, everyone can automatically tell based on the sermon who the pastor is actually talking about. And that's toxic too. Because now everyone is looking around, they're like, Sister Shirley, you're talking about you, right? Because everybody knew what happened, right? The same thing happens in work environments too. Management talking to subordinates about other subordinates.
Yes. Yeah. And it's awful because what it does is it creates such a divide between the subordinates. And now I can't trust the people that I work with. I can't trust you. I can't trust you to say anything to. What higher education and what education overall has taught me is to be very careful about what I say and who I'm speaking around. To be very careful of the jokes that I tell, because I can be very sarcastic and I'm a bit of a jokester. So if I get to talking, sometimes I can tell a joke and I may not take offense, but someone else may take offense. And I've also found in education, it may be someone offended that I wasn't even talking to, but they just overheard.
Yeah.
So I am very guarded in my current position. And the way that I am guarded in my current position is I rarely say anything about the job or anything about the people at the job. I very rarely eat with my coworkers. And when I do eat with them, I'm very careful in how I speak and in what I say. I keep it very, very light. If they get into talking about whatever they're talking about, my food becomes very interesting. Because what you're not going to do is walk away from this conversation and be like, oh, yeah, Danielle said. No. Danielle didn't say anything, but this lettuce was banging. That's what Danielle said. So I have learned how to make sure that my name is not circulating in a negative sense. And that whatever it is that may be happening, I'm not connected to that thing. Even when I hear office gossip and it's not related to me, but it's related to somebody that I may have lunch with, I slow down lunch with them because I can't be connected to. And I hate to say it, Kathy, I'm one of the few brown ladies there. So I have to be 1,000 times more careful because it can very easily be Danielle. It could easily be me. Even if it wasn't me, it could be me. So I am in an environment that is wonderful. I love the school where I work, but I am aware of the fact that I am very few and far in between. I'm aware of that. And I'm aware of
Mhm.
the fact that I am in a culture that will not directly address me, but will demote me or find something wrong with the work I'm doing to push
Absolutely.
me out. So
Absolutely.
I'm aware in those toxic work environments. Unfortunately, it's sad to me that I feel like I have to be on guard.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That's a very important part because, especially being African American in a lot of predominantly white environments, sometimes you may feel as if you have to be a certain way or you have to be a part of a certain social group to be accepted,
Hmm.
not realizing that there are a lot of people who are out for blood, right? And they want to befriend you to make it seem as if you are a part of the group so that they
Yes.
can get you to a certain stage where you become comfortable enough to start talking about different topics and then turn around and use it against you in order
Yes.
to push you out.
Yes.
That's why I always talk about discernment. Sometimes when you're talking to people, the good spirit knows the good spirit. And there's certain
Yeah.
times when you're in environments and you're like, no, you can just look at somebody or the way that they smile. And it's like that spirit is like, going on
Mm-mm.
back there to your area. Okay, this is not it. So sometimes you just have to be aware. Management talking to other subordinates, it creates cliques,
Yes.
and now people start to feel less inclusive. And now it
Mm-mm.
breaks trust. And what happens when you break trust with employees, if they're having a problem, if they're not doing good, if they feel as if they need your help, guess what? They're not going to go to you
They
now
don't
as a
come to
leader
you.
because
Yeah.
you're too close to some of their other coworkers. So now you may get the sense that this person is going to go and talk about how you had a meeting with them because you're feeling lost. And now you have your
Hmm.
other subordinates looking at you like, and it does create a divide and it breaks the trust between you and upper management. Guess what happens in the end? People start to leave.
Yes,
They
they
start to feel
do.
really uncomfortable.
And they feel disconnected. I go back to the word unsafe. They don't feel
Hmm.
safe. They don't feel safe. They don't feel valued. And it starts to the walls start to close in, especially if you're not part of the clique.
Yeah,
If you're not in the clique and you're out of it, now you start looking around because you're unsure of what the other people around you are saying or thinking about you.
exactly. How about being asked to do things that are unethical? And so, for instance, this happened to me, and I have one of my closest friends that is happening to right now. Being
Mm,
asked to terminate other employees having absolutely nothing to do with their productivity, having nothing to do with their work ethic, but it's just because of
mm,
how you personally feel about that individual. I've had to say in a couple different instances, no, I'm not going to do that. Under what grounds? Do you have proof? Is there a file on this person? Has this person been reprimanded? Is there verbal?
mm.
There are certain jobs where it says you can be let go at will.
Right.
But if you're not falling into that category, under what grounds are you asking me to terminate this person? I am not about to disrupt somebody's entire life just because of how you feel about them personally.
Yeah. And you know what? That definitely goes back to the passive aggressive, right?
Hmm.
I don't want to do it myself and I know I don't have grounds. So I'm going to give it to you so that you could do it. And now the person who has been let go, they're disgruntled, but they're not disgruntled with the person who wanted them fired. They're disgruntled with you
Hey,
because
who had
you were
absolutely
the
nothing to do with
person.
anything.
Yeah, because you were the person that delivered the message. So now you are the person that kind of goes down in flames in that person's head as this is the person that cost me my livelihood.
Hmm.
And it wasn't you.
Yeah.
So I feel like we are in a space where we all have to become comfortable speaking up and saying, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not in agreement with this. Unfortunately, for some of my bosses, I don't intimidate easy. So if there's something that I'm not in agreement with, I let people know, like, I'm not in agreement with that. I have to, and there are literally things that I have had to say, I need to really pray about this. I need to really, something about this feels off. Something about this feels weird, because sometimes upper management won't tell you the full detail. They give you the pieces and the parts of the puzzle that they want you to know so that you can do what they want you to do, but they don't tell you all of it.
Absolutely.
So when it's incomplete, now I have questions, and it makes me look at upper management through a different set of eyes. Whereas I may have had respect for you, now it limits the amount of respect I have for you, because what are you trying to do by pushing me to the forefront, asking me to do something unethical because you don't want to do it yourself?
Absolutely.
So that makes me lose respect for any person in upper management that wants to hide. But what is the saying? Throw a rock and hide your hand. I don't respect people that do that. When you throw in a rock, and some of these people throw boulders. Shoot, forget a rock. You throwing bricks, and you want to hide your hand. You can't hide behind me.
Absolutely. And you know what? I mean, I've worked for some amazing establishments. I've worked with some really great schools. But unfortunately, there's more toxic ones out there than the good ones. And it sucks to say that. But that's actually one of the major reasons why I end up leaving corporate America also, because my spirit was disturbed a little bit too much. Too many days in a week. You know, it was like up all night thinking about somebody else on the team who was about to be, unfaired for absolutely no reason, just because of someone else's personal gain. And now you start to mess with my integrity. Now we have a problem. Because I can be a little bit outspoken, when it comes to African Americans, they don't take that as you speaking up for yourself. They take that as you being aggressive.
Yes.
Right? But it's absolutely okay for everyone else. Okay, great. But, I've always been raised that way, where it's like, if something is wrong, say something, because you want someone to be in that same space when they see you being unfair, for someone to be the advocate and speak up for you also.
But when you say something, as a Black woman, it's not taken as you being an advocate.
No.
It's taken as you being a troublemaker.
Yeah.
So we always, when we advocate for other people, which we do a lot, we always have to consider the person we're even advocating for.
Yeah.
Because are you going to go to bat for me? I'm going to bat for you currently, right now in this space. But are you now going to go to bat for me when they start to call me aggressive, and when they start to call me angry, and when they start to look at me and say, did you see how she got out of her car? Did you see how she closed the door? Did you see how she opened her laptop? When they start trying to find ways for me to be aggressive, are you going to also speak up for me? Because I have found now that we Black women in the workplace need reciprocal relationships. I'm okay being your advocate, but you also have to be okay being my advocate. I can't just be out here trying to help you, and when it all falls down, all the bricks land on me, and you don't pick any of them up. You just walk away. Learn that lesson. That was a hard lesson to learn, but I learned that one. Education has taught me many things.
That's exactly how God set it up too. What about no boundaries? I hear people talk about this all the time. And I just had this conversation the other day too. No boundaries when it comes to management burning themselves out, pushing themselves to the limit, working 18 to 24 hours a day, and expecting subordinates who in most cases are hourly paid to go the extra mile and do the same thing. Now, there's some schools who you have the faculty, you have the staff, they believe in the vision and the mission of the school. So naturally, they're like, yeah, I'm going to go in a little earlier to help out or whatever. But there's one thing, wanting to do something because it's something that you're driven to do. And it's another thing when it's coming down from upper management that you're expected to do and go as hard as I am because I was up for the last 12 hours thinking about this report for tomorrow.
Right. You know what my issue with that is? My issue is it comes in a passive aggressive way now, where people don't directly say, I want you to work 18 hours, but they say, oh, what do you have going on this weekend? Because, we could really use your help on the so and so. And, if you just work just a little bit longer, and if you say, oh, my kid has a game. Oh, well, I'm sure your kid's going to have plenty of games left. Are you sure? Like when it comes in the way that you present it to me as if I have a choice, when the truth is, if I don't show up, there could be repercussions. I don't respect that. I much rather know what I'm getting myself into and have a boss ask me directly so that I can tell them directly, this is not something that I'm going to do or something that I have allotted time in my schedule to do, because I want to leave room and space for the overworkers. There absolutely are people who want to work 18 hours a day. People that's like, I was thinking about work. I was drinking, thinking about work. I was in my car thinking about work. I came up with a plan. It's people that all they want to do is work. So by all means, let the boss contact that person. I feel like when we talk about upper management and education, we really have to talk about being direct, because so much of management and education is indirect. So much of it is passive aggressive. And if we're really going to be here and going to educate people and going to be in positions of power, we really have to know how to speak to people, because you do have those people that exist. You have the overworkers, you have the underworkers, you have the people who I'm only clocking in on this time and clocking out on that time. You have people who will work through their lunch break. But if you don't open yourself up to knowing which one of your subordinates is going to do that, then you kind of punish people unfairly.
Absolutely. That actually ties into knowing your team. There's so many people, I talk about this all the time. There's so many leaders who have no idea who their team members are, and they've been working with them for like 10 years, and you don't even know that this person has kids. But it's like knowing each member on the team, you'll be able to know who you can approach and say what to, who you can ask different things of. Going back to your point of, okay, let me go ask the overworker if they want to do some overtime, because I know they're going to say yes. But this person has 10 kids at home and they have so many other obligations outside of work. Why would you go and ask that person or make them feel guilty? It also ties into friendships at work. And I know this is a very contradictory topic, because I've met some of my best friends at work. Some of my closest sisters I've met at work. But then there's other relationships where it's all a facade. You're not really friends. They're trying to befriend you for a reason. So now when that manager reaches out to you and saying, hey, and this happened to one of my friends the other day. Hey, you want to work some overtime on Saturday? No, I can't this Saturday. Why? And they didn't find a problem with it, because they're like, oh, well, we have that type of relationship. And I'm like, but do you? First of all, they were out of line to even ask why. The answer was no. I can't do any overtime. So it's like, I've never even heard you talk about this person in any type of way for you to say that, oh, we're friends, which is a term that's used very loosely nowadays. Oh, we're really close. In what aspect? Because you never ever bring this person up.
What does that mean? What does that mean that you're friends?
And now you feel obligated that you have to push all of your plans aside to go in and work for this person who you think is your friend. And that's something that's really challenging and difficult for people to come to terms with. Like, who are your friends in corporate America? Should you even have friends in the workplace? Should management and subordinates even be friends outside of work? It's a loaded topic, but it plays back into, being obligated to do things as an employee.
And, I definitely, I am with you. I have some of my closest friends are work related that I have met, but I have grown in trust with those people. And I know that I'm safe with them. There definitely are other people that I haven't grown in trust with them. And with me, I've only been in my new position for a year and some change. So for me, everybody's still
You're right on that surface.
yeah, everybody's still on a trial basis because I don't know. The way you present yourself, you very well could present yourself as a friend. Mm-hmm. And then you go in my boss's office and you're not my friend. Mm-hmm. So I really have to be careful about how I navigate the relationship, and also motives. Yeah. What's the reason that you're talking to me? What's the reason you're telling me this story? What's the reason you're telling me office gossip? What's the reason? What's the motive? What is it that you're trying to get to by telling me this? And what is it that you're looking for me to say by telling you? This just happened. One of my coworkers, she had an issue with one of the other managers, and she was like, "Oh, I can't stand her. What about you? How has she been with you?" And I was like, I love her. I had no issues at all. And in my mind, I was thinking, even if I did not love her,
I would not be telling you.
I would not tell you. Mm-hmm. As far as you are concerned, I love everybody. Every single person. Every person is the best person that I've met right now in this space. And when I meet the next person, they are also the best person.
My mother always told me that people do not have to know that you don't like them. Yeah. You don't have to go around snarling at people or giving them disgusting looks or coming off with this toxic body language. It's unnecessary. Regardless of what they've done to you, you're responsible for your response to that situation and how you deal with people. Okay, but people got it twisted. I'm going to treat you the way that you treat me. Where say that in the Bible? Don't be taking one line and then making it work for your life and how you are to treat people. Let's add 2 more points. No room for mistakes. Employees just do not get grace from their management at all.
In the toxic work environment, you definitely don't have room for grace. I definitely was in a toxic work environment when I was teaching in Orlando, and I made a mistake. I did not know how to do, I forgot what type of form it was, but it's some form I didn't know how to do. And the principal actually said to me, "You can't use that as an excuse." And I was like, "But I don't know how to do this." And I asked my administrator to help me with this. And as you can see, they didn't help me, and I've done it incorrectly. So if someone can help me with this, well, now you've messed it up, and you don't have to worry about ever having to deal with that again. I was running a club, and they were like, "We're just going to take the club from you."
Come on now.
So it was very, very emotional for me because it was a dance club that I started that all the girls loved it. It was the first one at the school, and they really found like their niche and their space. Yeah. And it was it was time that I was willing to invest in those girls, and they absolutely loved it. And then I found that one of the moms didn't care for me, and she was best friends with the principal.
There you go.
So then when I found that out, I said, "Oh, okay, now that makes more sense to me." But it was really disheartening to have someone in that position not be willing to explain what mistake I made and also not be willing to show me how to do it better.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And then, as you grow in education, sometimes you learn. This is something that one of my old coworkers told me: never teach the next person everything you know. And I was like, what? Why would I don't teach the next person everything you know? And I was like, I don't understand that. I grew to understand that mistakes, especially in education, are not forgivable to a great degree in toxic work environments. People will not train you for positions, throw you in positions, not train you for the work that they ask you to do, and then punish you for not being able to produce in the manner that they want you to produce. And the stress of that is awful.
Yeah. That's happening a lot in the admissions departments, which is why there's such high turnover when it comes to admissions. And I've heard from advisors who are just thrown into the sea, and it's like, this
Wow.
is your expectation. Especially when it comes to for-profit education, it's a sales position that's left out in interviews. But then you have advisors being given these outlandish expectations for the next class start. No kind of leadership or no type of resource on, okay, how I'm supposed to get to that number, but then don't miss a student on day one. Now, all of a sudden, you're put on a performance improvement plan. And it's like, hold on a second. How did I even get there? Because you didn't even tell me how I'm even going to get to that many students. This is why there's so many students who are misplaced in higher education, because admissions is like, if I don't make this number, I may be on the back of that unemployment line. So yeah, you hate blood. Yeah, you might pass out, but I need you in this medical assistant class. So we're going to go on and get you in there. If you make it past the matriculation period, great. Even if you drop the day after. I mean, I came from an environment where they knew that the second week, once financial aid hits, it's out of admissions hands. So you used to have advisors who used to say, I just need you to make sure that you sit at least 2 days of week 2.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Just 2 days of week 2. And these students knew that they were dropping the week after, because after that, it counts as a number for the admissions department. And it's strange that this is still going on in higher education.
I never knew that.
Now we're wondering why so many students are actually dropping from the program. Retention is taking a hit. And now student loan, which was supposed to be an investment, now turns into debt, because you shouldn't have been in that program in the first place.
Right.
It's bad. It's really bad. And there's a lot of great schools out there, but those few rotten apples, this is the reason why the government is against proprietary education. It's bad, because not all of these students are meant for a 4-year university.
Wow. I had no idea, but this explains, and now I fully understand. When I taught at a career college, some of my students would be like, I'm in debt. I can't register. I can't. I'm like, how did you get so far in debt? My advisor told me to do so and so and so. And then I knew I didn't have to do it. And then I had to drop a class, and then I owed money, and then they let me register still. And, and now I'm so many thousands of dollars, and now I can't register. Like, the amount of students that I ran into that had that issue. And I used to be like, what's happening in the advisor space where these students are like, they have no idea what they want to study. And it was like they were being taken advantage of. And I had no idea that that was even a thing to push students into until you get your financial aid. And that now explains to me how so many of them got stuck in those loans.
Exactly. And I know a lot of those schools have shut down, but there's still a couple of them out there. This is why I've been spending a lot of time on TikTok with the Gen Zs, because that's who we're talking to nowadays. And it's crazy that this is what a lot of them are still saying. I think we need to pay more attention to the students who's keeping these schools open and listen to how they're perceiving these schools, and then make changes. But, that's a whole nother topic by itself. But here's the most important thing when it comes to understanding if you're in a toxic work environment. How do you feel physically? And I think this is at the top of the list, because if you're on your way to work and you just feel so heavy, you're depressed, it's like a dark cloud over you Sunday night. And as soon as Monday starts, you're dreading the entire week and you're waiting for Friday. But then as soon as you leave the building at the end of the day, all of a sudden you feel light and bubbly. You're crying in your car on the way to work. That's a problem. I've been there.
Yes.
Crying on that highway because I just didn't want to be there. And there are so many times that I wanted to leave admissions, and I realized that it wasn't admissions that I hated. It was the environment. That was driving me to hate what I was called to do.
Wow. The environment and the people that you work with.
Exactly.
It's huge. I definitely can relate to driving somewhere and being like, I just don't want to go today. And waking up in the morning, checking my sick days, like, how many days many days do I have for sick day? I feel sick today. But knowing that tomorrow, I still have to go in. That feeling of, and I think that's one of the best parts about leaving that side of education is because I don't feel that pressure that I used to feel. I literally had high blood pressure, had anxiety, was suffering from depression. And I can remember distinctly one of my doctors being like, you have to leave your job. And I was like, no, it's not, it's all right. Sometimes it's up and down. And she was like, no, you have to leave. Your blood pressure is so high. And it wasn't diet related.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't exercise based. It literally was the amount of stress. And do you know, when I left education, my blood pressure hasn't been a problem since.
Wow.
Has not been a problem since. That goes to show how much internally I was really carrying, like, to the point to where I was physically ill.
Yeah.
Physically sick, physically suffering from literal anxiety to where it was debilitating, just based off of where I was going to work.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was change where I was going to work, change my environment, and that changed my health.
Absolutely. And that's one of the major solutions too. If it comes to the point where you feel as if there's not going to be any resolve, you have to start putting things into place to make the move, because your mental health is more important than anything else. And now your family feels the brunt of that also. Because I remember being in a job one time when I was younger, and it was so bad. The sexual harassment was like out of this world. And it was just really bad. And when I left, my mom said to me, she said, wow, you're back. This is the first time that I've seen you smile in about 6 months.
Wow.
And that was so powerful, because I didn't even realize that that's what I was projecting. I had no idea that that's how my family started to see me. You're in high school, you're trying to pay for your tuition, but then you don't even realize. My friend and I used to be on the train crying on our way home.
Oh, no, that's awful.
It's like, come on. And you know how many adults are still going through this now in careers that they've had forever, because they feel that fear of making the jump or taking that leap of faith. It was me too. Taking that leap of faith.
You feel guilty. For me, I felt guilty. I felt guilty for leaving my students. I felt guilty for leaving my school. There was a tremendous amount of guilt, that weighed on me. And I was like, how can I leave? I have this course that students are taking only because I'm teaching it, and I'm the only person teaching it. How could I leave them? I have students who are only signing up for this class for me, and I'm leaving. But I had to, because what my doctor said is, if you die, you're gone anyway.
And you'll be replaced by next week.
And I was like, oh, okay. Now that you said it like that.
Yep. Here's another thing. Cut the rotten apples, please. There's so many people who are toxic on the team and leadership. You guys already know who these people are. Your other employees, they're paying attention. They see the people who come twice a week. And now all of the workload goes on the people who are faithful and loyal to you. Cut those bad apples. There are people who are on teams and they're causing so much divide on the team, but they may be a top performer. So you're keeping it around. And when you do that, now it becomes all about business and not about the people.
Yeah.
That's why you have a high revolving door also.
People first. People first. People matter. Who you work with matters. Who you have around you matters. The environment matters. People first. The one thing I can say that I really love about my new work environment is the managers take the time to get to know you. They take the time to tap in. Hey, how's it going? How's your kid? How's your daughter? I've only been there a year, but to say that I know who has kids and who doesn't, and who's married and who's not, and who's in courses and who's taking graduate courses and who's teaching graduate courses and we really do keep kind of in a social loop. And it shows through the managers that you actually give a damn about my life.
Absolutely.
And it matters. When it was on the anniversary of my brother's birthday, and I texted my manager and was like, hey, I'm having a really rough go at it today. And grief is kind of up and down.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, that day it just was really rough for me.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, go ahead and take the rest of the day to work from home. No questions, no additional questions, no like. And it didn't come back around to me. It didn't circle back. Of like, you remember, you took
exactly right.
So I will forever respect that
Mm-hmm.
About my upper management, because they understood. And it's such a drastic difference from having that response to having a response to my father actually passing and being told, well, if you come back to the classroom just a little bit earlier, we'll give you a gate key to open up the gate because, we really need you in here. And I'm like, this is like my whole dad situation. Like, this is the whole situation.
Your dad. Oh, okay.
It was a whole thing. And they were like, oh, we understand, but do you know when you'll be back in the classroom? Do you know when and I was like, this is, it was a night and day difference. And then I did understand why there was anxiety. And then I did understand why my blood pressure was high. And then I did understand why there was so much guilt and so much weight that came along with it, because it was thrown on me from everybody around me being like, when are you going to be in the classroom? When are you going to be in the classroom? And then it weighs you down so much so that it's like, oh my gosh, the pressure.
Absolutely. Listen, as leaders, one thing, piggybacking off of what you're saying, empathy is huge and it's missing in a lot of workplaces, especially when it comes to higher education. I always tell advisors, people always say, leave your drama at the door. That's not easy. We are human beings. So I always tell advisors, if you had somebody that passed, even if you had a pet that passed, because when my cat died, I was distraught for the entire day.
I understand. They become part of your family.
Exactly. So I always tell advisors, I'm not expecting you to leave anything at the door, because if you had a passing in the family or something tragic happened to you, that's not something that you can just turn the switch off and go, oh, I'm okay. What I am asking you to do is, when you get to that point, let me know, go take a walk. That's when I was working out of a school, and I still train leaders to do the same thing with their teams. Go take a walk. It's okay. It's expected. Human beings, you don't know when these feelings are going to come. You can't expect an employee to leave trauma at the door until the ending of a workday.
Yes. Yeah.
You can empower them to trust you enough to say, for some reason, my mind is becoming overwhelmed with all of these thoughts and I can't concentrate. Take a walk. Take your lunch early. Take an extended. Walk away. Get something to drink. Do whatever is going to bring you back. Do you want to talk about it? So many leaders don't want to talk to their staff members because you're so inundated with everything that's going on during the day. You have to take the time to stop and pause and say, hold on for a second. When Danielle walked in this morning, something was off. Danielle, come chat with me. That's knowing your team members.
Yeah.
When you know you walk in every day smiling and then you're like, morning, Kat. And it's like, let's talk. You have to know your team.
I love that. Yeah. Good points.
Here's my last one. Read your reviews. Okay. The thing is, there are so many leaders out there, they have no idea that they're actually running a toxic environment, because you're in your office all day long, or if it's one of these situations where it's remote, you can't walk past somebody's office to see what's happening, right? So you're not in tune with your team. Read your reviews, especially from staff members who've left your company. You find out a lot by just logging on to your school's website and reading some of those reviews from past employees. Sometimes it can be an eye-opener, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this was going on under my nose. And now it's going to drive you to have more conversations with your team, talk one-on-one at least once a week. to get a take of where they are.
Yeah.
Do they still enjoy working for you? Some of them may want to work with a different department. You don't even know. How can I make your job easier? I hear a lot of leaders say your job is to make my job easier. Leaders don't sit at one of those rectangular tables. They sit at a round table. So
Right.
really, that should be reciprocated.
Yeah, we make each other's job easier.
Exactly. All right. So I mean, it's a lot, but I hope people were able to walk away with some tips, and I think that some people were able to go, wait a minute, this is what it was the entire time. They just couldn't pinpoint it, but now they listen to this and say, "Oh my gosh, this is why my pressure is so high."
I hope so. Look, if you suffer from blood pressure, check your job.
It's so important. So, Ms. Danielle, do you have any last thoughts for our listeners?
My last thought is really just to know thyself, know what feels good and what doesn't. We all have a knower inside of us, and don't be afraid to jump. If your knower is saying we're unhealthy, every time we come here, we get a migraine. Every time I come here, my stomach hurts. Every time I come here, emotionally, I'm heavy. If that is happening, it's time for a change. And don't be afraid to jump. God got you.
That part. I love it. Well, Danielle, it was definitely a pleasure having you back. I always enjoy your insights. You bring so much wealth of knowledge, to our listeners. And I hope you guys are really taking note. Your mental health is so important.
Yeah.
Your family needs you. Your friends need you. Okay, you were put on this earth to serve. All right. So sometimes you have to check your environment. And if you feel as if anything that you're doing is throwing you off track or preventing you from fulfilling your purpose, maybe it might be that time to go. And like Danielle said, if you feel it, take the jump because God got you. All right.
All right.
Thank you guys for joining. Until next time. Bye.
See you guys later.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. I have been working diligently to bring awareness to career schools. There's so much that they have to offer our students and our community. Every single role within the admissions process is critical, whether you're a part of the admissions team, financial aid, career services, academics, everyone deserves a voice. Admissions is the first point of contact for your school. So you want to ensure that you have a team who exudes confidence, passion, and a clear understanding of effective communication with our potential students. I totally understand the pain of missed class starts, low appointment and enrollment conversions, and this is why I created Next Level Admissions Training by Motivate with K.A.T. This platform is a step-by-step process, and it is going to train your new and tenured advisors in every single step of the enrollment process to ensure that our students are inspired and they're ready and prepared to start class. Admissions is not easy. It can be very challenging, but it's definitely worth it. So if you're ready to take your school to the next level, head on over to lessons.motivatewithkat.com and check out Next Level Admissions.